A few years ago, I had to travel for work pretty often, and most of the time the company would just book whatever cheap hotel was close to the job site. I didn't really care where I stayed as long as it had a bed and a shower. Usually, I'd check in late, sleep for a few hours, then leave early the next morning. One night, I arrived at this small hotel just outside a quiet highway town. It was around 11:30 p.m., and the place looked almost empty. The parking lot had maybe 3 or 4 cars, and the lobby lights were dim, like they were already preparing to close things down for the night. When I walked inside, there was just one guy behind the front desk. He looked tired, like he had been working the late shift for a while. I gave him my name, and he pulled up the reservation pretty quickly. While he was handing me the key card, he said, "You're in room 417. Then he paused for a moment, like he wanted to say something else. Right before I walked toward the elevator, he added, "If you hear anything strange tonight, just ignore it." At first, I thought he was joking, like maybe he was trying to make the place seem mysterious or something. I even laughed a little. But he didn't laugh. He just went back to looking at his computer. That made the comment stick in my mind more than it probably should have. Still, I didn't think too much about it. Hotels always make weird noises at night, people walking around, doors closing, pipes in the walls. I figured that's what he meant. The elevator ride up was slow and quiet. When the doors opened on the 4th floor, the lobby lights were noticeably dimmer than the lobby. The entire floor felt empty. Not just quiet, but like no one had been there in a while. There were about 10 rooms on the floor, spread along a long hallway with faded carpet and those old wall lamps that barely lit the place. I walked down to my room, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The room looked normal enough. A bed, a desk, a TV mounted on the wall. Nothing seemed out of place. I took a shower, checked a few emails, and eventually laid down to sleep. Sometime later that night, I woke up suddenly. At first, I didn't even know what woke me. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow footsteps walking down the hallway outside my room. They were very clear because the floor was so quiet. Step. 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 It sounded like someone walking slowly along the carpet. I figured it was just another guest heading to their room, so I tried to ignore it. But the footsteps didn't stop. They kept going, back and forth, from one end of the hallway to the other, then back again. It sounded like whoever it was kept pacing the entire hallway. After a few minutes, I checked my phone. 2:12 a.m. The footsteps continued. Sometimes they would get closer to my door, then fade away toward the other end of the hallway again. It went on for so long that I started getting annoyed more than anything. At one point, the footsteps came all the way down the hallway and stopped right outside my door. I could hear someone standing there, not moving, just standing on the other side of the door. I sat up in bed and waited. Part of me thought they might knock or try to open the wrong room by mistake, but nothing happened. About 30 seconds later, the footsteps started again, slowly walking away. Eventually, the sound faded down the hallway and everything went quiet again. I must have fallen asleep after that. The next morning, I packed my things and went downstairs to check out. The same receptionist from the night before was still behind the desk. While he was processing my checkout, I casually mentioned the footsteps in the hallway. I said something like, "Hey, someone was pacing the 4th floor all night. You might want to check on that." The receptionist looked up at me immediately. "You were on the 4th floor?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Room 417. He stared at the computer screen for a moment, then slowly looked back at me. "That floor is closed right now." At first, I thought he meant maybe certain rooms were under maintenance or something. But then he explained. About 2 weeks earlier, a pipe had burst on that floor and caused water damage in several rooms. Because of that, The hotel had temporarily shut down the entire fourth floor while repairs were being scheduled. No guests were supposed to be staying there. I laughed because I thought he was joking, but then he turned the monitor toward me. The hotel system showed a list of rooms. Every single room on the fourth floor was labeled out of service, except one, room 417, mine. I told him that didn't make any sense because someone clearly was walking in the hallway. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back slightly in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Then he said something that made the entire situation worse. "You're the third person this month who told me that." I asked what he meant. He explained that before the floor was officially closed, 2 other guests had stayed up there during the week the pipe burst. Both of them came down during the night to complain about the exact same thing. Footsteps pacing the hallway outside their room. For hours. I asked if the hotel checked the security cameras. He nodded slowly. They did. "And?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "The hallway camera covers the entire fourth floor. There was no one there. The camera footage showed the hallway exactly as it should have been, empty. But according to the timestamps, the footsteps the guests reported happened at the exact same time the camera was recording." I didn't really know how to respond to that. I grabbed my bag and headed toward the door. Right before I left, the receptionist said one more thing. "Did the footsteps stop outside your door at any point?" I stopped and turned around. "Yeah," I said. "How did you know that?" He looked down at the desk before answering. "That's what the other 2 guests said too." Then he added something quietly. "They said it sounded like whoever it was listening through the door." A few years ago, I used to work late shifts at a small office in the city. Because of the hours, I always took the last train home. It left around midnight, and by that time, most people had already gone home, so the train was usually almost empty. At first, I liked it. It was quiet. No crowds, no noise, just the sound of the train moving through the tunnels. One night after work, I got to the station a little earlier than usual. The platform was completely empty except for one man sitting at the far end on a bench. He had his head down like he was staring at his phone. I didn't think much of it. When the train arrived, I got into one of the middle cars and sat near the window. I noticed the same man from the platform enter the train too, but he walked toward the back car. Once the doors closed, the train started moving. The first few minutes were normal. I just sat there looking at my phone while the train passed through a few stations. Hardly anyone got on or off. Then something strange happened. At the next stop, I looked up and noticed the man from earlier walking through my train car. He moved slowly down the aisle, not looking at anyone, just walking. But instead of sitting down, he walked into the next car. Again, I didn't think much about it. But a few minutes later, he walked through my car again, from the same direction, which didn't make sense. The train had been moving the entire time. There was no way he could have looped around without passing me first. I told myself I must have been mistaken. Maybe it was just another passenger who looked similar. But at the next station, it happened again. The same man walked through my car. Same hoodie, same slow walk, same blank expression. This time I paid closer attention. He walked into the next car again and disappeared. I waited. About 30 seconds later, he came back from the same direction. My stomach dropped. There was only one door connecting the cars. I had been staring directly at it the entire time. He never passed through. But somehow, he kept appearing. At this point, the train was almost empty. There were maybe 2 other passengers far down the car, and they didn't seem to notice anything strange. Then the man walked past me again. But this time, when he passed my seat, he stopped. Slowly, he turned his head toward me. His eyes were wide open, and he said something very quietly. "Don't get off at the next stop." Then he kept walking. I sat there frozen. My stop was the next one. I kept thinking about what he said. Was it some kind of joke, a warning, or was he just messing with me? The train slowed down as it approached the station. The doors opened. I stood up, but I didn't move. Something about the way he said it didn't feel like a joke, so I stayed on the train. The doors closed again, and the train continued moving. About 10 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a local news alert. Breaking: police responding to incident at Central Station. That was the stop I was supposed to get off at. Later that night, I found out what happened. Someone had pushed a passenger onto the tracks just seconds after the doors opened, right at the exact door I normally used. The police never found the person responsible, and I never saw that man on the train again. But sometimes I still think about something that bothers me. When I first saw him on the platform, he looked like he was staring at his phone. But when he passed me on the train, I realized something. He wasn't holding one.
A few years ago, I used to work as a delivery driver. Most of my shifts ended really late, sometimes around 2 or 3 in the morning. Because of that, I'd usually stop somewhere to grab a drink or a snack before driving home. One night, after finishing a long shift, I stopped at a gas station just outside the city. It was one of those old stations that had a small convenience store attached to it. The lights were on, but the place looked almost completely empty. There was only one car in the parking lot. I parked near the entrance and walked up to the door, but when I tried to open it, it was locked. That was strange, because the sign clearly said open 24 hours. I knocked on the glass, thinking maybe the cashier was in the back room. A few seconds later, a man appeared behind the counter. He looked nervous, like really nervous. Instead of unlocking the door, he quickly walked toward the window and started waving his hands at me. At first, I thought he was telling me the store was closed, but then I noticed something. He wasn't waving me inside, he was shaking his head and pointing behind me. I turned around. The parking lot was empty. The only car there was mine. Confused, I looked back at the cashier. Now he was gesturing more urgently, pointing again behind me. That's when I heard it. A slow, crunching sound, like someone walking across gravel right behind me. I slowly turned around again. Standing near the side of the building, maybe 20 feet away, was a man I hadn't noticed before. He was just standing there, completely still, watching me. The weird thing was, the gas station lights were really bright, but somehow his face was in shadow. I couldn't see his eyes. I looked back at the cashier. Now he was frantically pointing toward my car. Then he made a motion like he was locking a door. That's when it clicked. He wasn't trying to get me inside. He was telling me to leave, immediately. I walked slowly toward my car, trying not to show that I was nervous. The whole time I could feel the man watching me. As soon as I got in the driver's seat, I locked the doors and started the engine. Out of instinct, I looked in the rearview mirror. The man was already walking toward my car, fast, way faster than before. I hit reverse and backed out of the parking spot as quickly as I could. When I looked again, he had stopped in the middle of the lot, just standing there again, watching. I drove off and didn't look back. About 10 minutes later, I stopped at another gas station closer to the highway. While I was inside paying, I mentioned what happened to the cashier there. He looked at me for a second and then asked something that made my stomach drop. "Was that the old station near Mill Road?" I said yes. He just shook his head. "That place keeps having problems."
Apparently, over the past few months, several people had reported a man approaching cars late at night in that same parking lot. No one knew what he wanted, but every single person who reported it said the same thing. He never tried to stop them from leaving. He just stood there, watching them drive away, like he was waiting to see if they'd make the mistake of staying.